We're good.
Okay. Thank you. We're Christiansburg Finance Committee meeting for February 7th. And the committee members are Henry Showalter and Sam Bishop. First item, we just got called to order. Second item is Budget Amendment 8 for fiscal year 21-22. And I'll let Val, I guess, mention this one. It's really just to basically formalize the $50,000 that's been granted to the museum.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot to add to that. Y'all approved that by motion back in November. And it has to be done as an actual budget amendment. So this is just a follow-up from that motion to create the budget resolution and the appropriation.
Okay. Second item is current budget year 21-22 budget status, and I'll let Val deal with that too.
Yeah, just real quick, we're pretty much on target as far as expenditures and our revenues. We talked about with the last budget amendment, meals tax revenues are coming in much better than we had budgeted or expected. Lodging revenues are coming in stronger than expected. Recovery in the lodging industry has really been happening. It was kind of hard to see in the first few months.
Mouse volume for some reason. Okay, well, I can't hear y'all.
Oh. Well, we'll pause there then.
Okay, let me try. Thank you, bud. Again.
Sam does not look to be a fan of Zoom.
Maybe new computers for town council that are here now will help.
Yeah.
Oh, we got them in?
Yes.
Oh, great. I think it will.
And I'm gonna get my little headset out because these things are the greatest things since sliced bread. You need to buy everybody a pair of these.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Val, do you want to continue, I guess, with the current budget?
Yeah, so, okay, I was just, Sam, I'm gonna kind of start at the top because I think you were having sound problems all the way through. I was just saying that the current budget year, expenditures look to be pretty much right on target as of right now. Revenues are coming in way stronger than expected. We talked about that with the last budget amendment where we added some funds to meals tax. Lodging tax has recovered much more than we anticipated, and it's coming in pretty strong right now. So feel really positive about that. I didn't know if the first few months were just kind of a quirk on that lodging tax, but we switched over to the new system September 1 and things got a little hooey with how we were doing stuff. So, so I was a little concerned about whether we had stuff in the right months, but they seem to be recovering really well and have been pretty strong. So I'm really pleased about that. Sales tax revenue numbers have been really strong. So from a revenue perspective, we're doing well and expenditures are on track in the current year. So with that, we can move on to the new budget year and where we want to start that. Do you want to run through the presentation real quick, Randy?
Sure. I don't know if you can see that or the agenda. Which are you seeing?
Agenda.
The agenda.
Let me do another share. Okay. And it's a very brief presentation. Guess potential revenue sources that Val and I have discussed, and I think one that we would obviously, recommend would be water rate increase. We've had a $1 increase scheduled, and that would result in approximately $26,000 in enterprise fund revenue. A few things, I guess, that would be possibilities for your consideration. Consumer utility tax could be increased from $2 to the maximum of $3. That generates about $100,000 in general fund revenue. Building inspections fee versus general fund revenue, that would be a general fund revenue, although we do feel we're fairly on par with the other localities. Development fees, I would want engineering to take a look at and just basically do a little bit of comparison. And these aren't necessarily suggestions, but just kind of more for your information of what we generate for real estate, meals tax, lodging tax, and cigarette tax. For each penny of real estate tax, we generate just a little over $250,000. For each penny of meals tax, we generate a little over $800,000. Each penny of lodging generates close to $90,000. And each penny of cigarette tax, $225,000 approximately. And again, that's for your consideration. That's not really a recommendation, but just again, so you'll know.
What is the, Randy,
Yes,
consumer utility tax? What is that?
it is a fee that will show up on utility billing. Like I say, on current customers, it's based on usage, although it's capped for what localities can collect at $3. Our rate is currently capped at $2.50. So we could increase our own, we have basically our own cap per code, capped at $2.50. Code of Virginia allows you to go up to $3. It's a type of fee, I guess it's a little bit of a hidden fee because it's on utility billing for private utilities. It is,
If you look at your gas bill or your electric bill, you'll see it kind of down at the bottom, like $2.50.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that.
Just about everywhere around that I can think of is at $3, that $3 max. Again, that's up to council to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Randy, this pretty much has been presented, at least in the recent years, for potential revenue sources.
It has.
Seems to be a repeat. And the water rate increase, is that on track with us breaking even, paying the authority for their increases? Or did we suspend it last year and we're behind and we're eventually?
We're still behind 1 year, basically $1.
Okay. So we'll still be behind based from what we looked at years ago to try to break even.
Correct.
Fund.
Correct. We'd still be behind $1 with $1 increase.
Okay.
From the former schedule.
Now, are we subsidizing that right now since we're behind?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say so.
No, well, no, we're not subsidizing from the general fund. What our revenues bring in over and above the operational costs go toward the capital costs that we have for the enterprise fund. So
Right.
we
The
haven't
answer is
had
we're
to
doing a little
supplement
bit
it
less
for a
capital.
while.
You guys are speaking over each other.
Yeah,
Sorry.
So have we been able to keep up with our water, our capital improvements, basically? That's what we've been using, right?
I think you could say
Yes.
we've done a little less capital because of that. But, it's, I guess on an annual basis, it's a relatively low number. Over time, obviously $126,000 a year adds up though.
Mm-hmm. So have we, since we didn't increase, was it last year, right? We kept everything even?
We did an increase last year. It was the year before that we forego the increase.
Okay, so are there projects that we've sidelined since then? Because of that, since we didn't increase 2 years ago.
We would have had 126,000 more for capital. So we could have probably either done maybe a larger project. We would have 126,000 additional in water capital reserves for future projects.
Right.
I guess
So
is another way to look at it.
And what projects do we got coming up that we're going to need that in there?
We'll definitely need it for, there's always
Roanoke.
water and sewer projects, Roanoke Street water, certainly.
Okay, so basically this increase is needed for us to continue our capital improvements of our water lines.
Correct. And also to keep pace with water increases that we're anticipating from the water authority.
Which is based on what we did years ago when we looked at the increases spread out over time. Okay. Now, the
Yeah.
consumer utility tax, is that something we definitely, obviously you guys are looking for a recommendation to come forward to say that this was recommended from the finance committee, but is the consumer utility tax something we definitely need at this moment, or can we continue to put it off for future tap into if needed?
It could be put off. It's not, you know, do we require it for the budget? No. Is it something to consider for a revenue source? It is.
No, right. But is it something we need in the year coming up for?
I guess depends on how you look at it. We can always, you know, could always stay in more general fund revenue. Is there going to be a budget need? To be honest, it's probably too early to say. Well,
Right.
because we're still refining the budget and capital and equipment. So.
Right. So for me, just looking at this page before we move on, of course, not considering, I don't want to consider the other tax rate generation at the bottom. I could almost forego for me, for a recommendation, the consumer utility tax, keep the building inspection fees neutral, and same with the development fees. Even if you check with the engineers, I would personally, unless there's a dire need for it, and keep those pretty much stagnant at this moment.
Okay. So you're just looking at the water rate increase.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that keeps on our schedule so that we can continue the capital with the promise that it'll fund future capital improvements for our water enterprise fund.
Okay.
Yeah, I think last year we were supposed to go to 11 for the base and 11 for all gallons per thousand gallons over the first 1,000. And we're at 10 and 11. So we're that $1 behind on the base rate, which isn't, you know, a huge generation of additional revenue. But it definitely helps to get us where we need to be.
Yeah, 126,000 annually. So.
Yeah.
I would definitely have an example of if you can average out
Capital projects, a project that could have been done.
Well, I would have that ready, but also for council to see what this increase really means to an average family. I'm sure we can find an average bill out there, and the reflection between this increase compared to last year's, what they pay.
Yeah, we could maybe run a few different water rates or different water bills for examples.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to dig up that plan council had years ago when the authority did their $30 million project and they increased it. It wouldn't hurt to have that available. That's knowledge, especially for the new council members, that we weren't sitting at this. These increases are based on something, and it's a reaction to the authority increasing their cost. Have that available for them. Not only the example, what it would mean, but also, sorry guys, but also what council worked on years ago, so we can at least not have to start subsidizing. I'm done.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this.
Before I get interrupted again by our puppy.
I'm going to go back to the agenda since the last slide I've got there is.
Well, first, you know, there's two of us on here, Sam. What do you think of that? I mean, it's a discussion. Do you agree with that, or should we? Because this is something Randy's going to make a recommendation to council, correct?
Understand? Yeah. Well, right now, I'm not in favor of doing 2 increases. I can go with the increase of the water rate, but the utilities, I think we need to put that on hold.
Understand.
So we're in agreement basically on the
Yeah.
on the water, but the rest can pretty much. where they are.
Okay.
Correct.
In regards to, I guess, the current year budget, a few things we were looking at. One would be a COLA and both a merit. We would also want to do targeted wage increases based at least to some degree on the former comp study. The consumer the consumer price index for Southern Urban for the past yearly increase was 5.1%. That's typically what I base the COLA on. The 2% merit we've sort of been doing as a standard. And the targeted wage increases would be going to positions where we have, I guess, particular problems in hiring, or we have noticeable salary gaps between us and, I guess, competing positions. And like obviously public works and lifeguard positions would be obvious areas of need there. In regards to what we have right now at current positions requested, we're looking at so far 8 rescue positions have been requested and 2 parks and rec. That's not necessarily going to be a budget inclusion, just kind of let you know what we've received in the way of requests.
Okay.
That's full time.
Yes. Although
Full-time.
rescue would be losing some part-time positions. The COLA, I guess in regards to the 5% COLA and the 2% merit, do you feel they are appropriate with the targeted wage increases? We are looking at some wage increases because of, I guess, minimum wage increases throughout the year.
So the 5%, is that basically what the state of Virginia is proposing across the board?
Yes,
And
it is. I believe so.
inflation from the past couple years. And what did we give last year?
It was a 2% merit and a 1% COLA.
So we gave a 3% total. And if we did this recommendation, it'd be a 7% increase
Yes.
with targeted increases. But for our, I guess, internal comp study, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And the 2 parks and rec, is that for the new facility?
One of them is, and the other one, it would be kind of an organizational change a little bit.
Okay, and what sort of organizational change is that?
He wants to create different divisions within the Parks and Rec, restructure a little bit, and kind of create a, I guess, a division of a maintenance division, youth programs division, and kind of a office management division within the department. Again, I'm not necessarily saying these are all recommendations, although I will tell you the park position will be included. And of course, the part-time park position that's going to be planned is going to be included. I think we were planning, what, 1 full-time and 2 part-time positions with the park?
Yeah, last year in the budget, we approved 2 full-time positions for the new park. And then this is an additional full-time position for maintenance of the fields and whatnot. So the 2 were approved in 22. So one of the positions is new for 23. We talked about it last year as a part of the budget, but since it wouldn't really be needed until well into the new fiscal year, we did not add it to the 22 budget. So it's really that one position is just for the new park, and one is sort of a reorganization within to move people around to better meet the needs, I guess, is what Brent's suggesting.
Okay, so that would mean 3 total park employees with this?
No, just 2.
Just the 2, okay.
Well, 2 additional, let me put it back, 2 additional.
Okay, but I'm talking about for the regional.
One is planned with the park.
One is already planned. This is the second one that we discussed, at least one of the 2 parks and rec positions, correct?
So for the park, there would be 3 full-time positions. Is what we're
All right,
looking at.
so this one of this two Parks and Rec is a third now.
Yes,
Yes, is that third.
And then the other
Yes.
position is for reorganization of the staff member within the organization. And he's going to
Yeah.
have a write-up for that.
yes,
And the rescue, the 8 rescue is coming from several part-time positions that are being bumped up to full-time.
correct. Although it would be a wage increase. And again, you know, not necessarily saying that's going to be included in the budget, just letting you know what the requests are.
Okay.
But there's definite need there.
We're just not sure it's 8 yet.
Not sure it's 8 yet, but it will eventually be 8.
There will a need for some, yes,
Yes.
definitely.
Any discussion? Do you want us to move on?
Well, if we make these full-time positions, what happened to the part-time positions?
They would go away.
Oh, okay,
They'd still have some, but just not as
Yes.
many.
So
okay.
Randy,
He has, I guess, a little bit of difficulty scheduling because he does have so much part-time help that they will, you know, schedule their primary jobs first, of course. And then that kind of leaves them to schedule their secondary hours here. And it's kind of more small blocks of time, and it makes scheduling difficult with a lot of part-time help. But he thinks if he changes over to full-time help, that it'll, like I say, give them larger blocks of time to schedule and 40 hours a week to schedule. So
Randy, when you say, hey, are you referring to,
Chief Hanks.
okay, thank you.
so Randy, how many of this 8 are actually needed for this recommendation of council?
Well, that's something I plan on determining over the next few weeks. But like I say, I know there's a need there. Call
Yeah.
volume is still the highest in the county, and you know, it's not going down any.
No, and we're still, exceeding our town line, correct? In helping.
Yes, we are still a net provider of service,
Okay,
or at least we were last year as a whole.
right. Well, you sent out, I think a graph was sent out for last year. Is it 30% of our calls are coming from outside of the town limits?
A good deal, yes.
And I can see those continuing or going up based on the volunteer status in our neighbors' communities, right? Especially
Yes.
Runner and the Shawsville Ellison communities.
Yes. Although I do think the county has agreed to fund a couple of full-time positions at both of those stations. But still, you know, they're still probably going to have some problems covering calls.
Yeah. Unless they're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
But it's a service that's demanded by our citizenry. So I'd be curious to see what you deem we need, you and Val, that we need right now to keep our high level of service, which our citizens have gotten accustomed to for the rescue, which is needed.
Okay, next item I want to talk about is community support process. You're familiar with the way we've handled it in the past. Do you want us to continue with that format?
Hey, before we jump into that nest, I would rather, since COLA I mean, that's high, and we did give some last year. Of course, you know, it's always can be debatable. We were behind for years and continuing, but this seems to be the average coming up. I would recommend that to be left in, but I would like the merit to sit out there for council to decide that. Because a 7% increase, and then we start targeting wage increases.
If you were going to do that, I guess personally, I would say that you should reduce the COLA rather than eliminate the merit. But that's my personal opinion.
Okay.
Because the merit is based on job performance. So.
Right. Thoughts on that, Sam?
Well, right now, like Randy just said that merit to me, you give it to people that's going, if you do a good job, you get more pay. Is that correct? And
Correct.
I mean, basically, I don't have a problem with you leaving both of them in.
Okay. So I'll defer the council. For me personally, I think that's a little high, 7%, and then we start doing increases right there. That's a big hit in payroll, but I respect with what Sam's doing, but a 7% increase across the board, considering we usually, what's the highest we've done in the past?
The highest we've done in the past, I know we've done 5% in the past.
With the
Yeah,
combined of the two?
The combined of the two, I know, well, combined of the two, probably 5
Yeah.
between both.
Yeah. So when you look at it,
We did 5% one year, but that was a state mandated increase.
right, for the VRS.
Yes.
Right.
When they made changes there. My concern is when you overall look at it as an employee, even though if you do a 3% COLA and 2% merit, which I understand that, okay? They look at the COLA specifically as we're not meeting the inflation issues that are going on right now. Even though we are initially giving them 5%. But again, this is something we can just refer to council on that, but the target is wage increases. You're going to have that broke down for council, what you're proposing. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any discussion regarding community support process? Or do you want to finish with any of the others?
We can move on to this. This is something that has, what's the percentage of our budget that is a community support?
It's a small percent of our budget, and we do spend a good deal of time dealing with it.
A ton of time. Well, just to refresh my memory from last year, was there any suggestions how we go about this? I mean,
Nothing really new. Basically, we've polled council in the past, and majority vote. If a application receives 4 votes, it would receive funding. Otherwise, it wouldn't.
and then I think in past couple of years, we've kept it either you vote for what the organization, the third party organization requests, and we don't go in and say, well, I know you want 5,000, but we're only going to give you 1, right? Are we
Correct.
still going to keep that process? It's either yes, we're going to give the full amount because they know what they need. They know what they're requesting or not. And it's sort of, I don't know. I mean, I think that was the debate last year, right? Where we give them half of what they request, or Val or Randy, can you refresh my memory on that?
Yeah, we've kind of over the last couple of years, we've done sort of a survey where I sent out a survey that said, here's all the requesting organizations, here's what they've requested this year, here's what they were funded last year. Yes or no? We will give you a summary of all of the requests. We will, hopefully, we have not gotten any in late. Everybody has turned theirs in by the 1st. So as far as I know, there's no stragglers out there. So I guess my only question would be, if I get any stragglers at this point, you only want put on there the ones that were in on time.
I know one time we had discussion about this before, is that we as council had talked about putting a cap on the amount that we would approve. Now, I know there are some organizations say, yes, what's it, ACE, the ACE program? I don't think we can put a cap on that. But I know for the last couple of years, we have talked about putting a cap on what we, as the town council, will approve, not what they can ask for any amount. So I know y'all say this is a long back and forth discussion, but you know, if I give somebody $25,000, I like to know where it's going to.
Mhm.
So I think this might still be a council discussion to see how they feel about putting a cap on it as far as council goes.
Yeah, and that's something, Sam, I think that we should do prior to this period in time. I think I think a cap is a great discussion, but it has to be done after we approve the budget so that when an organization applies for those funds next year, they know that there's a cap there. I think it's a great discussion, but I think now it's a little bit too late to be jumping into that. And
Yeah, we were gonna look at having that discussion last fall, but with 3 members deciding not to run, we sort of tabled that until there was
That's
a
right.
new council that could make that decision going forward. So, you know, we have had some different ideas and concepts, and I think once we get budget approved this year, we should definitely revisit that. Because there are certain organizations that really aren't, they're not asking for fundraising support. There are organizations for which we're a part. ACE is a little kind of outside of that. It's a little different scenario. But, you know, we have the airports and those different organizations that we're partner members of that we support.
we're
And
obligated
those, I think,
through a contract.
right. And those should be treated differently than the ones that we're saying, you need to fill out a request for funding, you need to tell us how you're
Right.
gonna spend it, why you need it, how it's serving the members of our community. And so that process, I think, works, but I think we need to find a way to segregate those organizations out. And we had some ideas for doing that a few years ago. We never got it off square one other than testing out the ideas. But I definitely would like to see us revisit that again come July or August before we get into another fundraising
Mhm. Well,
request cycle.
I would support what we did last year is send it out to council. The new council members would need to know some knowledge about why and that they need to support it. And I think we've kept it a blank slate on the voting, even though we've showed the detail on, on who voted for what or per council member voted for what. I would support we just go with the same process we did last year. And Val, I would leave it to you after the budget in the summer, probably July, is to have a work session with council to where we can sit down and just bounce ideas off of each other and have a good discussion. We'll probably have to have 2 unless we can settle it in one night on how we want the process to go next year for community support.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
Sam, what do you think?
Say what, Henry?
What do you think? Just keep it as last year and we'll meet in July on the new process?
Well, yeah, I mean, y'all made some valid points because we do have 3 new members on board. But I just don't want to see this thing keep putting on the back burner. We kind of forget about it. So right now, like I said, if it's too late to do anything, I can vote with my heart when it comes down to it. So leave it as is.
Okay, well, I'll put it on my task list. I'm not going to put it on you, Val and Randy. I'll put it on my task list, but it wouldn't hurt if you guys remember come July, okay, or right when we vote for the budget, so we can get a work.
I'm gonna put it on my calendar for July.
But I'm glad you mentioned that. I think I remember us talking about it with
We
3
have.
council members coming on. I know Brad and Steve and Marissa, they didn't want to hinder the 3 new council members, their input into this process. So yeah, thank you for remembering that.
All right, I have it on my calendar in early July to plan a work session.
And just to let you know, I think we received applications from everybody from last year with the exception of 1. Correct?
Yep, except for DCI, I believe. I think we have a couple of new ones. There was a couple that as they came in, I forwarded them to Deanna and she kind of creates the list and all that. And there was a couple I didn't recognize when they came in. So I'll hopefully have that together week after next, I think, and out to council to take a look at. So we'll have a summary of all that. Okay.
Excellent. Yep, thank you.
And the number last year was 195,000.
Okay.
ready to move on to capital?
Yes.
Yeah, we kind of skipped over the meals and lodging.
Okay, maybe, yep. I'll stop
yeah,
sharing
let
and let you
me-
bring those up if you like.
Yeah, let me bring those up. Okay, you should see a little chart. Okay, this is a sales tax chart. This yellow right here is where this is the current year. So this green strip is kind of what we're projecting. And it's I'm projecting a little conservatively, but it looks like about 2.4. If we look at the trend in increases for next year, we're looking at probably close to 2.6 million. Big caveat on that though. Right now, sitting before the state legislature is to do away with the grocery tax. If they do away with the grocery tax, it will dramatically impact these numbers. I'm going to get, depending on where that bill goes, which is looking like it may pass, and there's going to be a big hole. I'll
They
get
say
with the county and find out what their revenue projections are for what percentage of our sales tax is coming from the grocery industry.
I think the state average is around 20%.
Yeah, it is, and I'm hoping ours isn't quite that high, but that could have a significant impact on this projection number. So kind of holding on to that right now. If that bill does not pass, I think we'll probably be in the 2.5 to 2.6 area for sales tax. You can see by this chart that we have been growing in sales tax revenue. Even during the pandemic, we didn't take the big hit that we really thought we would. So, I mean, it leveled a little bit and went down a little bit a couple of months, but overall, the numbers were pretty high even through the pandemic. So that's kind of where we are on the sales tax on, oops, let me see my calendar.
Val, if you had
Uh,
to, yes, if the most, what would be the most negative impact to our sales tax? Or do you feel comfortable doing it? I'm not going to put you on the spot.
I'm going to say it could be $500,000. It could be as bad as that. It might not be. I haven't had a chance to really play with the numbers and see what they'll do.
Right.
This chart is dynamic, and I have over here, I have projected retail sales. So I can go in and alter what the taxable retail sales is down by 80% and pretty well project what that would do. But I want to get with the county and see what they're saying the income is, because they see where the actual sales tax comes from. They see whether it's, Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever. We don't get to see that information, but they can look at it in finite and say, yeah, it looks like 20% is coming from grocery and food service. So, but I think it could have about a $500,000 impact on that number. So that's a big if. So meals and lodging tax, this is kind of where we've been. This blue line is 2020. The white line right in front of that is 2020 and the pandemic hits. And we really just didn't take the hit that we thought we would. You can see it right here in April when everything shut down. It was cut in half, but within 3 months they had pretty much recouped. So apparently we all like to eat out an awful lot, and the tourists just add more money to it. So when the economy opens up, we have a lot more revenue out there in terms of the meals tax. So right now I'm thinking we may hit 8 mil this year, and next year a little bit more. I'm not projecting a huge increase. I think we're feeling a lot of the new restaurants that have opened up and seeing that revenue come in, and I'm thinking it'll jump up a little bit more next year. So maybe close to another 100,000 the following year. Lodging tax has kind of been the real news. It has just been horrid for the lodging industry. They have suffered the worst through this pandemic and people not traveling, closing down tech games and all kinds of recreational events that weren't happening, that are happening again, and they are recovering extremely well. So it looks like we'll see about $1.5 million this year. And I'm thinking of holding that pretty steady for next year. Just because it seems a little not sure. But just kind of holding the same on the lodging revenue. But it's good. I'm really, really glad to see the hotels turning around and getting more revenue and more events going on. It's nothing but positive news in that regard. So that's kind of that. I'll keep an eye on the sales tax thing and keep you posted on that and let you know what other information I get with respect to the percentage that they think is retail from grocery. Randy, you have anything to add to that thing from VML Vaco in terms of, I know they've really been pushing against it, but I don't think they've been real successful.
But they have, you know, they urge us to contact legislators if we want to oppose it. You know, I can't say how likely it is to pass. It's definitely getting opposition from VML though.
Yeah, there's some discussion about the state needs to replace that revenue for the local governments if they're going to do away with it. How they would come up with that number is, I don't know.
That's
I'm
really,
hoping that
that's
they'll
really
just put
what
it
they're
off.
lobbying for, is if they are going to pass that they want some type of allowance from the state for it.
Right. So we'll see what they do, I guess. And you guys have any questions on the meals and lodging?
I don't have any.
Did we lose Henry? Don't see him.
It looks like we did.
All of a sudden, I realized there was only 4 squares. It should have been 5.
Re-promoting him as panelist, so he should be joining us again.
There he is.
Any other questions about meals or lodging or sales?
Well, like I said, I don't have any. Look like Henry's muted.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to capital, Val?
Sure.
Sorry about that, guys. My other computer bounced out on me. But I got most of the presentation. I was added as a presenter. Sorry.
Okay. So we're ready to move on, and we looked up, and there was only 4 squares instead of 5. So we just kind of held on until you got back on there. So if you're good, we'll go ahead and move on. The one other thing I was going to show you is, we've been moving into the new software that is hopefully going to go live July 1st. So we are doing our 2023 budget in the new software. So this was just a little thing I wanted to show you. The way they put their budgets in, they have to put in detail, and this is just one of the capital accounts, but I can pull it up by capital account and see exactly what they're asking for. So this is the rollover, the software implementation. IT's asking for some switches and a nimble. PD's looking at 3 new patrol vehicles and 1 support vehicle, 1 training vehicle, 5 new mobile data terminals. So, I don't know that all this stuff is going to stay in the budget when we get to fine tuning all of this stuff. But I just kind of wanted to share with you how kind of cool this is, that it's all in a piece of software that should make budgeting and your ability to look at the budget and what you see and what is out there for you a whole lot easier in the future. We have a lot of functionality that's not live yet that we're still working on the implementation for, but just wanted to show you a little piece of some of the progress that we're making here. And I'm hoping this makes it easier to put together our capital schedule for this year. So, but we have way more capital requests than we have money, which is normal. This one account here totals like $3.9 million. There's another account that I think totals 10 million. So we already know we can't afford it all. So
Usually around 6 million in capital roughly per year.
yeah, roughly depends on, you know, if you include those capital projects in there or not. So we'll get that whittled down and you'll be able to see some pretty nice detail on it. So, but we have lots of work to do on that yet. So that was all I had to share. So I will stop the share. Turn it back over to you, Randy.
I'll go back to the presentation. The last, I guess, next item on the agenda is.
Oh, we did want to ask you if you guys had any particular capital requests or projects that you wanted to be sure move forward. I did notice that the downtown restroom park, the restroom for the downtown park is on here.
Well, that was a request from one member. That was, I think Joanna requested that those bathroom facilities at the College Street Park, correct?
Yes.
And I would defer to you, Randy and Val, meeting with the department heads and determining what we can fund this year or not. To keep with the tradition that we've done every year for the past several years. Instead of letting it get too political, it's you guys who determine the needs over the wants. And that's what I would task you guys to do when you present it to us. And you still plan to do that, right?
Yes.
All right.
Next item on the agenda, and this is for your discussion as much as anything. I've got a draft budget schedule. Right now, we've only got maybe potentially one more finance committee meeting, although we might need more. Also, town council meetings. We've got several council potential dates for work sessions. Like I say, it's kind of your information as much as anything, because these dates have to work for you as much as they do for Valerie and I. Just kind of timing wise, it's roughly where we're looking. And like I say, we might need more finance committee meetings than that too. Do you want to maybe look at these dates and let us know? Does this look like a good schedule to you? Do you want more finance committee meetings and less council meetings?
I think really for this, we should, and this is me speaking and just being here for years, and regardless of what the finance committee recommends, you're going over exactly, of course, the capital needs that you had that spreadsheet on, you guys are going to narrow that down to needs versus wants. But typically what happens is council has to go through it as a whole. And if it's something that's sort of, there's a contingency on one or two items or more than that usually, or questions, it's going to take a majority of council to get it through. So I would almost recommend this, we move on with the council work sessions, because regardless, it's going to take a while, especially for the new members to ask questions and sift through. So the real hard part is Mike coordinating, making sure we're there and we listen, and then we ask questions afterwards. And then of course, a majority of council for certain wants, I'm sure will be needed.
The second meeting in March is when Val is required to have a budget presentation for town council. So we have to have it prepared by then. Of course, obviously, the July 1st, or I guess June 30th deadline for budget adoption is another hard deadline. The second meeting in March, really, that's an internal deadline because of our budget policy.
So how long do you think it would take before that March 22nd to get town council together in a work session for the budget?
I think we could do it sometime in March.
Okay, sooner the better.
Okay.
And Randy and Val want you, and I wouldn't want you presenting something until you have those presentations by the departments and you've got something at least for capital needs, because that's typically what we get bogged down in is revenue, capital needs, right? And then the COLA and the merit and stuff like that. But and Randy, I would also extend an invitation to each of the new council members or any of us to come in, schedule time with you and Val. If you guys can swing an hour of our time, your time, for anybody who has questions when the rough draft goes out.
Yes.
Would you rather do that March 15th meeting as a meeting with town council before we do the first presentation to council?
We need a work session before the first presentation to council. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe the March 15th, make that a council meeting then.
The 15th or 16th. The 16th would be a Tuesday.
And there's no town council meeting that day. I don't have my calendar up here.
No, the 15th is a Tuesday.
Okay.
Then yeah, I would.
This 15th is Tuesday.
I would recommend we schedule as early as possible work session. Because I have a feeling with the new members, and it's respectful of them so that they can understand what's coming out to them in a week's time.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else for discussion?
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Okay, I'm ready to call it a day.
I think we all are.
Okay.
Well, that leaves us at number 9 then.
What's number 9? I can only see 8.
Just adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn. How about you, Sam?
A second.
You guys have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks.
All right,
Good night.
bye.